just starting to climb up over the treetop. And it's gonna be a beautiful day, that's plain to see. But I won't be around at all, so don't even bother to call. 'Cause on a day like today, there's one place I gotta be. I'm gone fishing.
Welcome to Lunkers with Lenny and Friends. This is going to be a little video package that we're going to put together for you folks every once in a while. Just going to address certain questions you might have on any sort of species of fishing: trout, bluegill, bass, salmon, steelhead, you name it, man. Like I said, got quite a variety of folks here that fish in this club, and if I can always find an answer if I don't have a close answer. So basically what we're going to cover on this little episode is the wonderful world of backlash. We've all been there, got that little loop in your spinning rod, and you're like, a lot of people have to just open their bail and start pulling. Not a good idea. So we're going to cover how to get rid of this backlash, both your spinning baits, your spinning reels, and your level lines. As Rick and I like to call it, we call them professional overruns. But there's some tricks that I can show you and teach you that you can get those things out real quick and get back to fishing without having to cut out 50 to 200 feet of line and cutting down your casting distance because you don't have a nice full spool anymore. So that's basically what we're going to cover, just little tips to keep that from happening, and if it does happen, how to get rid of it. So stick with us. Alrighty folks, there you go. This is what we're talking about on the low level line. The old backlash, bird's nest, professional overrun, whatever you like to call it. As you see here, we got a bunch of line. That's just, basically with the level line, this usually occurs when you're casting and your bait bangs into something unexpectedly and you don't have enough pressure on the spool, and basically what happens is you end up getting a whole bunch of wound up. It tangles up on itself but won't pull out. So what you want to do here is when you get one of these backlashes in the level wind is pretty simple. Basically you want to what I do is, first thing I do is open it up, and I'll just start pulling off line real easily. You don't want to pull hard because it's just going to bury stuff, put it in deep. So I pull, as you can see here, it's gotten tight. If you roll back, sometimes you can usually see like a little line with a V in it, and sometimes you can just pull that little V a little bit like that, and then boom, see, I went past that spot. But then sometimes you get really stuck. That sucker will be just tight as heck, and you just can't get down in there. And the last thing you want to do is start getting down there and picking with your pocket knife or something, because then you're just abrading. You're just a lot of abrasion on the line that way if you start picking or digging at it, and that's just going to weaken the line. And if you happen to hook into a decent fish down the road, chances are, if you've got an abrasion in that line, it's going to snap on you and you're going to lose that nice fish. So I strongly advise against digging at it with any sort of sharp object. So once it gets nice and tight and I can't pull it out, and if I can find the V, but I just can't get it and pull it and everything, what you're going to want to do is, it's really simple, is you want to just simply take your thumb, put it on the spool, and what you're going to want to do here, I need to turn my pole around so I don't break it. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing here. Just put your thumb on that spool, apply pressure, and what you're going to want to do is reel, and just reel it. That, and just give it a nice little few reels, and then you're just going to want to open that bail again, slowly pull it, keep pulling it, and as long as it's giving you quarter, take it. But then again, you're going to get to a spot like right here. Once again, we're nice and tight. As you can see, I could probably get this one out by just simply playing with the line and pulling on it with my fingers, and then keep going. But like I say, every once in a while you're going to get that one that's just going to stop you right dead in your tracks. It's again what you're going to want to do is, and you might have to do this more than once. You know, you might have to do it 2 or 3 times to get the bird's nest out. But this is the fastest and the easiest way to get it without damaging your line. It's again just a lot of pressure on that with your thumb and reel. Open up the bail. Just keep pulling, pulling, and as you can see, this thing's slowly coming out. Oh, we reached another one. Got kind of tight. I can kind of keep. You can see that V there. So I give it a pull on this one. I think I might be able to get that one. Got that one with just a simple pull. Just keep going until you get all that loose line out of there. Once again, there we go. We got tightened down a little bit too tight. Get that thumb in there. I mean, I hold it until I'm turning my crank without the spool turning. That's how much pressure I'm putting on there. Open that puppy up again. Just keep stripping. And lo and behold, bam, there we are. We made it. We made it. She's all nice and cleaned up now and clear, down to nice fresh line. Here, imperative that you, once you finally got that out, make sure you get up here a good 6-8 inches above your reel. Pinch that line good and tight. Reel it back on. And I don't do this fast. I do it very slow in case I get some, twists as I'm reeling. Last thing you want is you see it. Look at what I've got right here. Perfect example of what I got. See when I got my fingers there. It starts to ball up on you, and that can turn into a real super knot, and then you ended up cutting it out. So you just want to go slow. Don't get ahead of yourself and reel something into it that you don't want. And there you go. There you have it. That's the big cast bird's nest professional overrun. Get it out every time. Alrighty, let's move to the spin cast. Alright guys, as you can see here, and gals, how many times, and I know we've all had this one because most of us, this is your standard spin and reel. This is the one that we use 99.9% of the time. And if you, especially with monofilament, I mean, most of us have gone to the, new braided lines now, and so they're a little more forgiving than the your monofilament and fluorocarbon lines. But we've all had that where we've reeled in and we're looking down and we're getting ready to cast, and we see that stupid loop that's off your spool. I mean, there it is, the loop. And what a lot of people do here when they get this loop, if you're fortunate enough to catch it before you cast, you're great. If you don't catch this before you cast and cast with a loop like this in here, basically what you're going to end up with is just a big wadded bird's nest up to the eyelets of your rod. So it's imperative that you always look at your spinning reel before you cast to make sure you haven't. I mean, this is a pretty good size loop. I've gotten this one right here. Generally, they're about half that size, maybe. I mean, I've had them this big before. But generally they're half that size, maybe even smaller. Sometimes you just might see just a little bit of a loop sticking up above that spool, And believe me, you don't want to cast. If you cast, you might get lucky and you might cast it out. But 90% of the time you're going to cast and it's just going to load up the eyelets with a bird's nest, and then you're going to be there for the next 10-15 minutes trying to undo all that. The other thing people do when they get to this point here, and they look down, they see that loop in the line on their spool, and the first thing they want to do is reach down, open up this bail. They want to crack that bail open and start pulling line. And what happens is exactly what you saw right there. It just starts grabbing it and going. Not good. So then you got all this here, you know, and that's not what you want. So I strongly suggest never opening up the bail. The best thing to do when you got your loopy is just to loosen up your drag, really super loose. I mean, make sure you don't loosen up too much, your spool falls off, but enough that you can pull it real gently, and that's going to go. And then basically what happens, you just keep pulling that, and eventually that's going to pop right out. And this one's already popped out. It's already popped out. It doesn't take long to get down there, because if you hand line it off like this, you're taking it off as the way it was put on, and if you just open this bail, it's going to just want to pull everything off with it. This, you're just taking one layer at a time when you just loosen that drag, and that's what's important, is just, you know, taking that loop until you get down to it, one spin at a time. So once you get there, you get your loop out, you're back down to some good, nice, tight, fresh line on your spool. Same as with the level line. Crank that drag back up. You don't want to forget that. Then I reel it. Same as the level line. Nice pinch. Good tension on that line. Get that sucker back up. And there you go. You're ready to go. You got a nice tight spool. Once I do this, though, the first thing I do is I want to pull on that drag, see how much I tighten it up, make sure I didn't tighten it up too much or have it too loose, and then I'll just go ahead and fine tune it to where I want it. Once I got it to where I want it, she's good to go. Boom, and off we go fishing. Alrighty, I hope this helps a few of you out and saves you some time on the water. And that's basically it for the spin and run. All right. All right, I hope that helps you out on a little bit with your spinning and bait casts problems. Something we all have and will always have. So, like I was saying, those are very simple techniques that you can use to get yourself out of some pretty sticky situations rather quickly and get you back on the water. It pretty much works on all types of line. Like I said, most of us have, you know, switched over to the high performance braided lines, but it also works just as well with your monos and your fluorocarbon lines as well. Like I said, the rules kind of apply all the way across. It doesn't really matter what's on the reel. It's just, you know, follow those simple steps and it'll get you out of some struggle real quick. The one other thing I forgot to mention that I do too as well is after I make my cast with the spin and reel and my bait caster as well, is one of the things, first thing I'm going to do is going to lock that reel back down. I'm going to lock the bail or lock the gears in the bait caster, and I'm going to look at my reel just to make sure I don't have anything going on, because usually when I'm casting, I'm going to let it sit for at least a 10 count, 20 count anyway before I start that retrieve. So you might as well utilize that time to your advantage. Take a look at your reel, make sure you haven't got any loops or twists already started. The one thing I do with my spinning rods is I always reach down once that bail's locked down on the reel, and I just reach down above the reel, grab the line, and just pull it nice and snug to make sure everything's nice and snug on the spool. If I do have a little, say I've got some slack built up in my line, before I do start that retrieve and my presentation, I will make sure I'm pinching my line between my thumb and forefinger, you know, like I said before, about 6-8 inches above the reel, and take that sloppy line out until I get some, you know, at least some water tension back on that line, and then I'll, you know, let go of it and let it take over. But you definitely want to, especially with the spinning rod, before you start, you know, pinch that line for the first couple of 3 turns, give it that pull, pinch the line, and you'll find that you'll cut your loops and twists in your line down by about 80%. I swear by it. I mean, if you you've ever fished with me, you'll see me all the time. As soon as I'm done casting, the first thing I'm going to do is you can see me just reaching down and grabbing my line to make sure everything's nice and tight on the spool. Alrighty, we're going to move on into give you guys some pointers on the Green Peter Smallie Slayer that's coming up on March 18th. Just going to go over some of my favorite baits and baits of other club members. Go over some hook sizes and the reason why we vary our hook sizes. And that'll probably be it for this episode of Lunkers with Lenny and Friends. So let's cut to that, and I'll give you some info on the Smallie Slayer and what seems to work best for us up there, and pretty much what we'll be throwing. Colors always vary, and I'll cover all that when we get to it. All right, let's get to that. Okay, here we are. And what we got here is just a little bit of our bait selection that we use and a little visual on some of the different types of hooks and reasons why we use them. Might as well first start with our go-to #1 bait that we're going to be throwing on the 18th at the Smallie Slayer, and that will be the Gary Yamamoto Seiko. This bait has been the #1 bass bait, I would say, going on now for probably at least the last 4 or 5 years. Anybody that bass fishes has got this bait in their box in just about every size and color made known to man. And that's these right here. This one here is basically pumpkin with black flake. Like I say, we'll use various colors. This is one of our favorite colors for Green Peter. Us also is a watermelon color. This is a watermelon over here. You can't really tell the difference in colors on this camera or anything. It's, you know, we're digital, so we're not getting a great picture. But you can see they come in different sizes. Here's 6-inch Seiko, and here's the 3-inch Seiko, and they also come in the 4 and the 5 in between. I do believe they come even bigger on up to, I think, 8 inches and even 9 inches. But here in Oregon, about 6 inches is about as big as we like to get. And this is our go-to, the 6 and the 5-inch, 4-inch, you know, they all have their place and time. And it's just, you know, trial and error and experimenting and finding out what the fish want. The other bait that I really like using at Green Peter and other bodies of water on Oregon as well are grubs. These, once again, come in, you know, several different varieties and shapes, colors, sizes. Here's just, you know, a little 2-inch black right here. Here we have, this is the 4-inch watermelon. This is a Gary Yamamoto here. This is one of my favorites. I like to throw this 3-inch in this particular watermelon with black flake. I also like it in a pumpkin with black flake. This color over here, black is always good. I mean, you can't go wrong with black on a grub. And the way we like to rig these up, normally I'll either go with over here, like, basically what we got here is from a 1/0 to a 5/0. So we got a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5/0 hook here. Something this tiny like this, I'm not going to try and put on, say, a 1/0. Something tiny like this is going to either go on a slider head, which is what we got here. Basically, it's a weighted head. This happens to be a 1/16 ounce head on this. My smaller stuff I'll put on something like this, or even just an open jig head. It just works a lot better. It's too small of a bait to throw on that big of a hook. Now I will throw a 1/0 on this and go weightless with it, and that's my preferred way to go. The other good plastic that we use up there is some sort of swim bait. Like I said, these also come in several brands, various sizes and shapes, and every color under the sun. One of my favorite is the Super Fluke, the Zoom Super Fluke. I like it in the 3, 4, 5, 6-inch. A lot of big fish on this bait here. I'm not afraid to throw that at Green Peter, and it's a swim bait, so you can either just bring that back to you with just a nice slow retrieve, The way I prefer to fish it is, you know, pop and stall. Basically, I'll swim that thing for maybe 2-3 feet and I'll stall it. And then as it's slowly doing its descent to the bottom, I might give it a couple of pops, just a pop, pop. And what that causes this bait to do is dart through the water and look like a wounded bait fish. And 9 times out of 10, after the stall and you give it that 2 pops and you let it sit and go for that stall again, that's normally when you're going to get hit on that bait. Once again, depending on the size of this bait, will depend on the size of hook I use. This particular size, this 4-inch, I'm going to go with, you know, the biggest I'd probably go on this would be the 2-aught. It would just depend on how fast I want my bait to fall. And now we'll get into that and the hook sizes and why we have these 5 hook sizes down here. Well, you're like, Denny, you know, you got this one bait and you've got 5 different hooks that you can put on that bait. And if you notice that these particular hooks that Fred and I get, especially with the Yamamoto where it's such a nice fatty bait, I mean, there's a lot of rubber there, there's a lot of meat to get in here in the throat of the hook. And what I mean by the throat is basically from the tip of the hook to the widest point in the gap. This is called the gap. And you don't want to be filling that gap up with a bunch of plastic. It's just going to impede your hook set. It's going to cause you to get, you know, weak hook sets if you've got too much plastic in that throat. What I love about this particular hook and the manufacturer of it is there's only about maybe a 1/16 of an inch difference in the gap from the 1-aught to the 5-aught. I mean, there's only about a 1/16 of an inch difference. And that's not much, you know, so you can get away with a pretty good thick heavy plastic on this 1-aught. I mean, I have no problem throwing this fatty Seiko on this 1-aught, especially if I want that thing to follow super slow to the bottom. And that's what we use these sizes of the hooks, because bigger the hook, more weight, and especially when you're weightless, you can kind of control that descent, how fast that bait falls, by the size of hook you put on. And that's how we determine a lot of times what size hook we're going to throw on these, especially these 3 baits right here, is how fast we want that to fall. If I want it to fall super slow, I'm going to go with a smaller hook. If I want to pick up the speed and have that get to the bottom a little quicker, bigger the hook. The other bait that I'll be using, and I'm sure another few folks will be throwing up there, probably not as much as we will be our, you know, slow rolling our plastics, because it's definitely going to be colder water. So it's going to be a very slow presentation up there. And so it'll just depend whether the fish want to chase or not if we'll move over to, say, some of these crankbaits. I'll definitely have one on. I'll definitely throw it. How much I'll throw it will determine on the fish and whether they're willing to chase. Once again, every size, shape, form known to man, they do different things. You know, stick baits like this Rapala here are a great bait for the smallmouth. This is a large one. I think this is like the J14 or J11 or something like that. It's a pretty big one. I wouldn't necessarily be throwing this one at Green Peter. I just put this one on the board so it was, you know, a little more visible. I would probably, you know, knock this down to, you know, about 2/3 the length. I wouldn't go much bigger than that. Something in, you know, a trout or a baby bass pattern is probably going to be best, or crawdad colors are going to be best in that. And these do several things. I mean, you can get these where they float, they sink, and they suspend, you know, so you can get them to where you drive them down and swim them and stall them and they'll slowly sink. The sinkers will. Or the floaters, you can swim them and drive them down and let them sit and stall them and they'll float up. And then you got your suspenders, which will basically hold where you, when you stop reeling, and just kind of sink. Most suspending lures will slowly have a slow descent to them, but it's very gradual and very slow. And then every once in a while you'll get a good one that'll just sit and hold tight. Then we move on to something like this, your deeper diver crankbaits. These are going to run anywhere from, 2 to 6 feet, depending on, your bill. These crankbaits here, like your little shad bodies, we're going to definitely be throwing these. I like them in a crawdad color up there. Crawdad and perch seem to be one of the best colors for the smallies. This particular one probably is about a 6 to 8 footer. It's a floater, so once I stop retrieving it, it's going to slowly just rise to the top on the stall. So, all right, before we were so rudely interrupted there by my cheese ball recording program, I'm a cheap bastard, so I go for free software. That's why you'll notice the tacky watermark at the top of our video here. Alrighty, back to the crankbaits. Like I was saying, this will just all determine whether or not they're going to be in the mood to chase. With water temperatures we're going to have up there, that'll be a big factor. I really don't see myself spending a lot of time on, throwing a crankbait in particular, but I will have one tied on, like I said, and I definitely will be using it. Now, the bigger the bill, it's going to dive deeper, but really, your main concentration you're going to want to spend on is your plastics for green Peter. So if you don't have any of these Gary Yamamoto Seikos, get them. Don't necessarily go out and buy Gary Yamamoto brand. Gary Yamamoto brand, you're going to, spend 70 cents a stick per bait, for Yamamoto's, so go online, get on eBay, hit one of us up for one of our people that we pour, because we have people pour custom colors and custom baits for us all the time, so we have people that do that for us. So if there's something that you can't find that you'd like to get, let us know and we'll see if we can't get it for you, because like I said, we've got a lot of people that pour for us. But like I said, let's stick to your plastics. Is going to be your best bet. The Seikos, your grubs, some sort of swim bait, even your worms up to 6 inches, your curly tail culprit worms will work. Basic colors you want to use up there are just stick to your earth tones, your watermelons, your pumpkins, your blacks, and you'll do just fine and you'll be all right. Alrighty, I think that wraps up that section of the Lunkers with Lenny bait go over for the Green Peter Smallie Slayer on March 18th. Alrighty, I hope that helps folks out. Alrighty, I hope that was informative enough for you people, and I covered some stuff that you haven't heard before and stuff that you can apply to your everyday fishing excursions and make them more pleasurable and more fun for yourselves, instead of spending time getting those bird nests out and dealing with line issues. That shouldn't be as much of a problem as it was before if you just, follow those few simple things, and I know that it will make your life light years better, especially when it comes to monofilament and the fluorocarbons. Just like to thank everybody that's taken the time to watch, check in with us. I'm hoping next time we do this that maybe I'll have someone with me to kind of go over a few more things, and it doesn't have to be all me. Like I said, title's Lunkers with Lenny and Friends, so got to have some friends here too. But I just wanted to get this kicked off and started for all you, and get you some information for the Green Peter Smallie Slayer on the 18th. Alrighty guys, gals, take care, and wham! Fish on! Lunkers with Lenny and Friends.
Now the sun is just starting to climb up over the treetops, and it's gonna be a beautiful day, that's plain to see. But I won't be around so don't even bother to call. 'Cause on a day like today, there's one place I gotta be.